they always are Mishalom for Hashem all the time, sort of. And this parak itself seems to be one. Okay, let's learn the mashal that Rabbeinu Moshe puts forth as, in our understanding, the conclusion of the book. Based on the first paragraph in this chapter, we read it as the mashal is the me'ein chasima, ke'ein chasima. Because then further in the chapter, he systematically addresses all the things he said he would. I am going to open the discussion in this chapter with a mashal. Ve'oimar. So we're going to translate this correctly as only Pinnis and also Goodman, actually. Almost. One place he kvetched it and sort of lost the whole thing. It's okay, no, I'll read it inside in the Hebrew, but whenever the Rambam says Melech, I'm going to say Sultan, because what happened here is that the Rambam used the word Sultan every time here, but for once. And then the next chapter, where he also talks about a mashal of a king, there he used the word Melech, and we're talking about the Arabic word Sultan and the Arabic word Melech. Do we know for a fact that the Arabic word is Melech and it's not the Hebrew word Melech? No, we do not, because it's the same thing in Arabic and Hebrew. All the translators don't bold it, don't italicize it, meaning they assume it's Arabic, but it may be that the Rambam was using the Hebrew word Melech. But in this mashal, we're going to replace, where the Rambam used the word Sultan in Arabic, we're going to say Sultan. Ha-Sultan be'armoinoi. The Sultan's in his palace. By the way, what is the difference between Sultan and Malach in Arabic? I have no idea. I tried doing a little research on it, but Claude was not very helpful.
Interesting. It was helpful.
Yeah. Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So what do you come out with? What's the difference?
It says that Sultan is more negea to governance, order, say for a society.
And Melech?
And Melech is more of a reference to a royal personage, or to a royal
personage. Okay, maybe.
Presence.
Maybe.
That's what he tried to type.
Yeah.
Couldn't bring
It said something right. It said something different for me, and I was suspected that I was making it up. So I don't know. It was different.
But he tried to answer.
Right. Yeah. No, he tries. He always tries. Okay. So what's the mashal? Hamelech be'armoinoi. I'm sorry. Hasultan be'armoinoi. V'chol anoshav chelkom nimtzam ba'ir v'chelkom michutz alei. All his people, some are in the city and some are outside the city. Elu mehem shebe'ir. Yesh mem mishamavnes gam bezem alponav l'derech cheres. So some are outside the city, some are into the city. Within the city, some people are turning away from the house of the Sultan. I'm sorry. V'yesh mem mechaven al beis hasultan u'poinei elav v'vaksh l'aknus b'lam d'fon v'adayin l'skam zavayis umi eschem zabayis. Period. So the three groups are outside the city, in the city, but turning away from the house of the Sultan. Third group is someone who's facing the house of the Sultan, seeking to enter, but hasn't yet even seen the walls. Fourth group, some people have reached the dwelling, the habitation, I think is a better word, of the Sultan, and is seeking the entrance. Another person actually entered and is walking through the corridors. And there's another person who actually penetrated into the inner courtyard of the house. Here's where the Rambam used the word melech. Sultan. See how terrible it is that everyone used the same word, because Rambam in Torah used switched words, and no one but for Pinnis did this, and Goodman probably learned from Pinnis, which is okay, at least he learned from Pinnis, but here's where he ruined it, because instead of saying in the house of the Sultan, using the same word that Rambam used all the time, he said he's in the royal abode. So he lost the whole. Yeah, he should have lost the whole kishmak. Okay, so you notice again. So the Rambam says there's a marshal with the Sultan who's in his palace, and we're up to the 6th level. Someone who's in the Chotza Primis, such that he is with the Melech in the same place. What's that same place that he's with the Beis Melech? The house, the abode of the Sultan. But he's there, yet he doesn't see the Sultan. Somehow, even though he is the same place as, by the way, the king, but not the Sultan, he doesn't see the Sultan. I was always bothered, first time I read this, first time I read it this round, How could the Rambam say he's in the same place as the king, yet he doesn't see the king? The answer is he never said that. He said it's in the same place as the Melech, which is the abode of the Sultan, but he didn't see the Sultan. Very weird to say he's in the same place as X, but he doesn't see him. Why doesn't he see him? He's looking the wrong way. He's looking the wrong direction. The answer is he never said that. He said it's in the house of X and he doesn't see Y, because, and that's what's so important about that distinction. He is in the same place as the Melech, and the same place as the Melech is the abode of the Sultan. And he doesn't see the Sultan. He's in the abode of the Sultan, doesn't see the Sultan. He's not in the same place as the Sultan, the same place as the Melech, which is the abode of the Sultan. Okay. So what do you have to do to see the Sultan? If you do this extra hashtadus, notice interestingly here the Ram doesn't tell us what it is. In the mashal, which is very spatial, it's very simple. Okay, there's a city, people outside, inside, going touring the wrong way, the right way, reach the palace through the door, get into the inner thing, and then you would say, okay, what's the next step? Approaching the king or something? No, he just says, Hishtadlus Neisefes. Very interesting. Very interesting. Like, in other words, in the mashal itself, for some reason, he doesn't even give us a good mashal for that, right? Because the Hishtadlus is not a good mashal. Every mashal has to be concrete. You don't tell us. And then you do X. Here it's like you read the Hishtadlus itself, you don't even know what the Hishtadlus is. Something very strange about that. Or can the Ram say he has to focus, or he has to
to be fair,
gain the king's attention, the sultan's attention?
To be fair, nowhere within the mashal yet has he described how one gets from further out to further in.
Yeah, but he says
just
nichnas.
describing levels.
Okay, so you're saying, okay, so fine. So then according to that, he should have skipped the Shtadas Sefes. In other words, you're saying, let's say he would have skipped the Shtadas Sefes, so then you'd say, okay, the seventh level is Yamad Lefnei Sultan. He never said he's standing in front of the Sultan. He said you're in the abode of the Sultan.
Or is the
Yeah.
Sefes part of the mashal?
Well, it seems to be, but if it's part of the mashal, then a good mashal is supposed to be explicable. It's not supposed to just call on some vague thing like Ishtadas Sefes, and we're not going to tell you what that is. In the nimshal, nimshal has to be left standing, but usually the mashal should be complete. I think there's something interesting there, and see, because what the Rambam does in the nimshal, the move from 6 to 7 is not so obvious, right? The move from 6 to 7, a person already gained in the nimshal now. A person already gained all the knowledge there is to gain, but now that's not enough. He has to get rid of all distractions. He's not doing any more positive thing. He's just turning away from everything else. So that's why the Rambam in the mashal says, okay, he's already alluding to the fact that you're really there, but nonetheless, you need to do something more. But it's still something interesting there that the mashal seems to be a little bit incomplete as a mashal, it seems to me. Okay. Basically, you wouldn't find a medrash like this, right? Mashal ma'adav le, and then Hishtadlus Sefes, like tell me the mashal, it's not a rich mashal. Okay. Shalom is supposed to be rich and relatable. Fine. Now, after the next Hishtadlus, you could stand in front of the Sultan, see him from far or near. Okay, that is the mashal. And now, question, if I don't read it inside, is that fine?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a lot, right?
It's very long.
It's very long. Okay. So let's talk about the Rambam's pisrein. Okay, the Rambam here gave a mashal and a pisrein. And I just want to suggest a subversive idea that maybe there's another pisrein that the Rambam didn't tell us. No, keep in mind, the Rambam's telling us a pisrein. Does that mean this is the only pisrein? Crazy read, just putting it out there. Is there allowed to be more than one pisrein? Mamish no Indian to the shear, and I have nothing to do with this thought. I just wanted to throw it out there. Okay.
Does he do that?
I don't know.
You're just going Strauss.
Yeah, I mean, look, this mashal is the climax of the whole book, right? This is a very special mashal. Where else? The Rambam, it gives mashal else, but okay. So let's go through the 7 stages here, and as we're going to point out, as you know, there's really 2 tracks within the 7 stages. Okay, the Rambam now gives us the interpretation of the mashal. The first people in the mashal, those who are outside the city, are people who don't have any religious opinions, not through speculation nor through tradition. Okay, that's the first people, and they're not really people. They're not really people. Okay. All right. Second group in the mashal are people who are not outside the city, they're in the city, but they're going the wrong direction. So those are people that think and have opinions, but they have the wrong opinions. So they're going the wrong way. Third people in the mashal, people are in the city seeking the house of the sultan, but haven't yet reached it, are the Hamoin of Torah people, Amei Haaretz Oiskim b'mitzvahs. Okay? So they're already inside the city, but they don't know how to get into the palace of the sultan. Fourth group, which is people who arrive there, see the walls, but haven't yet entered the gates, seeking the gates. Those are Chachmei Halacha who have the correct dais, but only through tradition, and they learn Torah Halacha, not Baki. They don't know how to be ma'ayin in the fundamentals of religion. Okay. Fifth group, which is people who went into the gate but are in the corridors. Those are people who learn Be'iyun in the Yisai Sadas. They're able to learn Be'iyun. So this is like guys who learn some Nevuchim, learn some Amunas Udeyas, learn some Chavos Alvavis, Kuzri.
Incorporating the ones before them in your mind, or
Interesting.
what if you're not holding an halacha, but you're busy with if you say this or that?
That's a good question. Okay, it's an excellent question. Yeah, because you definitely don't have to go in order, because the second group, you don't have to go the wrong way before you go the right way.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily cumulative, right? You don't have to start like a turkey in the north and then go the wrong way and then start. Yeah, so I don't know. Interesting. Okay, now we're up to the sixth group. Sixth group is someone to whom everything was proven and he has certainty about divine matters, what can be certainty, what it can be certain about. So he's with the sultan in the house. Okay, he's with the sultan, by the way. Before the Rambam said he's with the melech. With the melech, here he's with the sultan. Okay. Now the Rambam goes back, doesn't tell us who the seventh group is. Now he redoes groups number 4, 5, and 6, and Makbili edition does a nice job here of giving us the number, the letters for those. Kvutza 6, Kvutza Dalid, Hey, and Vav. And he seems to shift gears here, and he says the following: know, my son, that as long as you're doing mathematics and logic, you are part of that fourth group, which is in the mashal, people who are outside the house, the palace, looking for the gates. As Chazal say, Adayin b'tzayim b'chutz, al derech mashal, which now, parenthetically, the Rambam seems to be saying that this mashal that he gave of the palace and being outside the palace actually comes from Chazal, and that's what they meant when they said Adayin b'tzayim b'chutz. They were thinking of a king, a sultan in his palace, and B'tzayim is outside of the palace. Okay. When you understand natural science, then you're in the palace and you're in the corridors. When you complete natural science and you understand metaphysics, divine matter, same word I used before, same word, then you're with the Chotz Aprimus with the sultan, and you're in the same house as him, and that's the stage of the Chachamim who have many levels. And now the Rambam says seventh category. Okay, so the Rambam seems to have given two nimshals, and as we'll soon see, they are actually contradictory. Seventh group is what? People who have reached Shleimus in Inyanim Elokim. How could you reach Shleimus in Inyanim Elokim? Either you could be part of paragraph number 8, which is not talking about someone who studied logic, mathematics, science, and then metaphysics, but nonetheless somehow is certain about okay, there's a big distinction. I just want to just point out a distinction which I have to look into better. I just noticed it now. In paragraph number 8, the guy who's in group number 6, let's call it the yeshivish track and the intellectual track. Let's not say yeshivish track. Let's say traditional Torah track. Anyone have a good word for this? I don't like Torah either. It's the first track as opposed to the second track.
Halacha track, I don't know.
Okay, halacha track. I like that. Let's say halacha track as opposed to the intellectual track or science track. Okay, the science track is, we know it, famous from the Rambam, says in numerous places: logic, mathematics, natural sciences, divine science. The halacha track is, he starts off, well, let's assume it goes cumulatively, maybe you could skip it. He starts off keeping the mitzvahs, and then he learns halacha, and then he starts looking into Yisodei Hadas, and then he reaches certainty. And there's a difference between group number 6 in the halacha track and group number 6 in the science track. Group number 6 in the halacha track describes as Hoyoloi Vadai Minhan Yonim Elokim. He has vados. And group number 6 in the science track, he says Tovin Eson Yonim Elokim. He understands them. And it's obvious that he probably thinks you cannot understand them. You cannot understand Yonim Elokim without studying mathematics and logic and natural science. However, but it does seem that you could be certain. Surprise, surprise. It seems if you read this parak, it seems like it's possible to have certainty about divine matters, even without doing it in the way that the Rambam always prescribes.
From Sarah, from what?
Oh, how's it happen? I mean, it's a good question. Yeah. You have a holy gut. So I think we'll see. It's Feirish over here. There's other places in the Sefer that's alluded to it. In other words, there seems to be a halacha track. Okay, we'll get that in a minute. We'll get to that very soon. Let's just finish the nimshal here. So now up to group number 7. What does it take to
I
be?
just want to point out, sorry, I just want to interject. He says, "V'hoylei vadai," but then he says, "V'skarev el havados."
Huh.
In the same sentence.
But Masha'ev shel iskarev, right?
Which means it's
very
almost
good.
like you're not at vados.
Very
You're
good.
as close as you can.
Very good. Excellent. So we always read that as Rambam qualifying, as he says elsewhere in the Sefer, certain things that we cannot know, and certain things we can only be close to certain about. But that's how I read it. But it is notable that he speaks that out in the halacha track, and he doesn't speak that out in the science track. Okay, perhaps because if you're talking to a scientist, understanding divine matters automatically means not knowing certain things, knowing that there's certain things you can't know. Right. Mm-hmm. You don't have to speak it out. So there are 2 ways to read the distinction. Either the halacha track doesn't have the same kind of certainty that the science track has. The halacha track only has hiskarev. But I would say no. The science track, understanding divine matters is understanding the limits of knowledge, as Rambam tells us so many times. But you cannot. But maybe that requires understanding to know that that is the essence. Mashinkin, if you're more of a halacha guy, then you need the Rambam to tell you, like, that's okay that you don't have certainty about certain things. You know,
And you're reading
maybe something like that.
inclusive of paragraph 9 as referring to the science track,
For sure.
even though the end of it is Zui Dargas HaChamim.
Chachamim, science. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Chachamim. Not? Well, all right.
Chazal.
Wise people, exactly. Correct. Al-alam. Yeah, there's wise people, sages. Okay. Now, 7th group is what? And this is what we pointed out before, that it's not really a quantitative next step. This corresponds to hishtadlus noisefes, which is what? They turn away from everything else to Hashem. And all their intellectual activity is dedicated to understanding things they want to learn about from Hashem, etc., to know how he rules them. They are in the presence of the sultan. And that is the level of Nevi'im. Okay. And this is why basically Rambam says, as we discussed, Rambam says in so many words that this Sefer he's here to train you to be a Navi. As he basically says it explicitly. Fine.
It's interesting, he says, Elohim HaNitzavim Moshe Lamelech, which is a different language, but it's conveying the same ideas, that they're in the habitation of the king.
Yamud Lefnei HaMelech, here it's Nitzavim Moshe,
No,
to
but
look
I'm
closely.
saying the distinction between 7 and 6. What's 6? 6 is also they're in the king's abode, as it were, the habitation of the king. And
But they're not in his audience.
but again, meaning what you should say in 7, going back to the beginning of the marshal, is that they hear and speak or see the king, but that's not what he says.
Aha.
He says that they are in
Very
Tzaveh in Moshe Rabbeinu.
Very good. So I think the answer is you have to read on, really. Some of them, shoyel v'nenem medaber u'medubar elov. And some of them just see. No, so that's what we didn't read to the end.
Right.
And some of them just see. That's completing the nimshal in perfect correspondence with the moshel, where he says speech and sight. Okay? Right? That's it. That's clear. Okay. Toiv. Now, I want to say like this. We have to understand, when he says da b'ni, okay, besides for the fact that he's calling him b'ni, and why is he calling him b'ni right here? Here's what the Rambam is not doing. And by saying da b'ni, he's announcing he's not doing it. He's not giving two parallel interpretations for the mashal. Then he could have said, look, here's one interpretation, here's another interpretation. He doesn't quite do that. He doesn't say, this mashal has two interpretations, at least for groups 4, 5, and 6. He says the interpretation of the mashal is halacha track. Group 5 is people who do mitzvahs. Group 4 is do mitzvahs. Group 5 is people that learn halacha be'iyun and accept they learn how to say that Torah, or they just accept it. They don't know how to think about it. Let's say, and group. Wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, group. I started from group 3. But say group 4 is the people that chachmei halacha, done halacha, and are not baki in Yisaidis. Group 5 is people who are Isaac in the Ian of Yisaidis, and group 6 is someone who has certainty about Dvarim Halakim. That's one nimsh. That is the only nimshal the Rambam says as a nimshal. When he says here, I'm going to give you the pisron for the mashal, he gave the pisron for groups 4, 5, and 6 already. And then he says, know, my son, that you, if you are like a new thing, which is something unique to this Talmud, and obviously other people could be like it, and B'tzayim also seems to have the same problem, but it's something particular. This puts you also into group number 4. Okay, so he's not saying I want to give you two interpretations of this mashal. Two. Is that the right word? Interpretations. Two nimshals. He's not quite saying that. And not only that, I think the second interpretation, as such as it is, actually contradicts the first one. I'll ask you a question. This Beni, who only studied logic and mathematics, was he Isaac Be'iyun Be'esaydei Sadas? Okay, I want to mix them up. In the first nimshal, he says, if a person's Isaac Be'iyun Be'esaydei Sadas, he's in the corridors. So I have a question. And then he says, if you just did logic and mathematics and didn't study natural sciences, you're not in the door yet. But why am I not in the door? If I studied Yisod Sadas Be'iyun, shouldn't that get me in the door?
Well, he's being misasik, which suggests that he's not actually completed it. He's still
Who's being misasik?
Dabani, he's talking to
Right.
Talmud.
Oh, he's only doing Madoid Mathematica and
Yeah.
logic. No, you don't have. I'm asking like this.
I'm not following.
I'm asking like this. Da Beni, if you're doing only math and logic and you haven't yet progressed to natural science, then you're outside and you haven't entered yet, right? So that means you're in group number 4.
Which also means you're not a Baki Yisodei Sadas.
But why not? Well, that's my kasha. My kasha is, even if a guy, you can't just give, I'm saying it's like this, you can't give two nimshals, because what do you mean? Well, how could you say if a person did not study natural science, he's not in the door yet, if studying Be'iyun B'Yisodei Sadas gets you in the door? It means you don't have to study natural science. You could
That's what I
study.
was mentioning earlier when I said you have to. Is it cumulative? Meaning
No, I thought you were asking each track. I think you were asking each track.
No, I was
Oh, the two
Can
together.
I go to group 5
Yeah.
if I want to skip 4? Can I go to 6 if I want to skip 5?
Maybe you could. One second. Maybe you could in the halacha track.
But not in the science track.
Science track you can't because you can't study metaphysics till you know
Can't
natural
study
science. You can't study natural science till you know that. I thought your question was in the halacha track. I thought your question was like this. In the halacha track, what if a guy's like, I don't want to study Prate Maase Avodas Hashem. I'm going to go straight to Ian B'Yisodei Sadas.
Yeah.
That was your question.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Now I'm asking a different question.
You're asking a guy that does das. Only is doing that.
He did Prate Maase Avodas Hashem and he did Yisodei Sadas. Okay, he went in order in halacha track. And then the Rambam's like, by the way, you never studied natural science, you're not in the door. What do you mean? You just told him I'm in the door. It's a stira. That's what I'm asking. Okay?
Let's assume that he's actually talking about this.
The Talmud.
The Talmud.
Yeah, he for sure is.
The Talmud was Isaac B'Yisodei Sadas.
Oh, okay. So that's an interesting question. So that's an interesting question. You're saying maybe you're suggesting, right? You're suggesting that maybe it's Dafka this Talmud who wasn't Isaac Nisei Sadas, and then he wasn't Isaac Be'im Nisei Sadas. Okay, that's interesting. That's a very interesting theory. Really good side. So I want to tie it like this. I want to tie it. Oh, and I want to ask like this: Ben Zayma. Was Ben Zayma by Isaac Be'im and Nisei Sadas? What do you think?
I think he was.
So he was.
Yeah.
I assume so.
He was. He went to paradise. I mean,
Part of his parties, how else otherwise?
yeah, the Maisa. That means he was trying to do something. I mean, he was definitely Isaac. Be'im Nisei Sadas, right? So yet he's bachutz. Why? Because he didn't know natural science. So he's like Beni. Ben Zayma is like the Beni, but this is a stira. Because how could you say I'm not inside it? Okay. So then the answer clearly is, I mean, not clearly, but what suggests itself is that for certain people, either there are two tracks, we'll see. Okay, either there's two tracks, or there's different people. And for different people, entrance is gained different ways. But I want to think more like the fact that there's two tracks.
I'm not sure what the between these two bits.
Okay, right. Let me tell you what I was thinking. More like two tracks, and
But
then
notice, he also says, in the science track, right? Okay, within science, there's different doctrines, right? The other 9.
which one? Let's say within science. Yes, end of 9. He says you should know
There's
different level.
different
Right.
levels.
Also before he said,
He said it's a das. There's no, it's either in or out.
except no. Right. Exactly. Very good. There's no levels in 6. 6 in the halacha track does not have levels. 6 in the
5
sciences. 5 in the halacha track has levels, and 5 in the science track may or may not. Because when he says you're walking through its corridors, he might mean to say like that might be moving. That may be what he's saying. So I don't know why he makes it. It's an interesting diak. I don't know why he makes that distinction. So I want to suggest the following: the Rambam started his relationship with the student as going back to the letter to the student. The Rambam describes what happened, that the student used to come across statements in the Torah that he wanted the Rambam to explain to him. Okay. The story of the student, by the way, is that math and logic were his thing. Rambam studied logic with him, and astronomy. He never quite got there, and at least in his studies with the Rambam. We're not sure if he actually ever made it to where the Rambam wanted him to, but this passage right here that we're reading in 351 suggests that the student may have not, and may have indeed never progressed beyond logic and mathematics. And Rambam's not just saying a theoretical thing, right? He's saying, Kozman, that he's sort of encouraging him, time to move on. It's also an interesting diak, right? Because he's not, I think this you're pointing at some, that Kozman is asik with that. It's not just that he's not saying as long as you haven't studied natural science. It's almost like you're too busy with that. Like you're busy with that.
Still struggling with it.
Either struggling or like just that you're letting it, you're making, maybe it's giving it too much attention. You like it too much. Maybe that's what it is. I once sent this to a mathematician friend of mine. He didn't know what I just said Dalacha Shekaz Mashat Mathematica. And he's like, where's this from? No context. Like, where's this from? But now I mean to say, because I think that's Rambam is, I think that's the implication here. That it's like you have to understand that that's only a prerequisite, and you can't be consumed by it. I think that's such a mashmos. I'll go upon him. So the Rambam in the letter over there says, okay, you had mathematics you liked, and we studied logic, and I want to reveal the secrets to you, and I was alluding things to you, and I saw that you wanted me to tell you things of the Inyanim Elokim. And the Rambam says that the Rambam describes his studies with the Talmud. The Rambam says in paragraph number 2 in the letter that he was constantly rejecting him or delaying him. The Rambam says, I wanted you to make sure to get it in order. Okay. I did not want to start with the last part of that sentence. I did not want you to reach certainty b'mikre. So it's possible to reach certainty b'mikre. It's possible to reach certainty accidentally. And then there's something called derech ha'emes. There is something called the derech, the right path of emes. And it's very important that The student reached the truth bidarka. What's the derech to reach the truth?
Science.
Yeah. We know the derech. The Rambam it says a parichos.
Crazy. Just sometimes you get there with certainty.
That's right. Well, exactly. The derech is we know the derech is we know the curriculum. Rambam describes an Aleph Lamed Daled, logic, mathematics, natural science, metaphysics. That is the curriculum. That's the derech. In other words, that's the way Hashem made the world. That's where Hashem designed the mind, that it can reach the truths through this way. And then it has true understanding. But it could have certainty, the mikra. How does it reach that certainty? Not so clear.
Does certainty include understanding?
I don't know. Right. I mean, if you medayik in our parak, there's understanding as opposed to being certain. Right.
That's not the optimal.
It's not, right. No, for sure not. Right. Right. So, I want to explore this a little bit. What exactly, what is the way to reach certainty in mikra? In other words, what's this other path? By the way, it's interesting we're calling it the halacha path because you know that there's a big steer between the Moreh Nevuchim and the Mishnah Torah. The Mishnah Torah, the Rambam says a person should only study Ma'aseh Merkava after he studies Yosef Beheter. That's Yosef Begdal, Yosef Torah. Meaning the prerequisite for Ma'aseh Merkava, according to Mishnah Torah, is the Mishnah Torah. It says, go study Mishnah Torah. And the prerequisites, according to the Moreh Nevuchim, are actually not Yosef Beheter. He says nothing about it. In Perek Lamed Daled, he says you have to study logic, math, natural science, metaphysics. So it's a big steer. What this suggests to me is that there's actually two tracks, and in line with what we see in this chapter. There's the halacha track, and then there's the science track. And the halacha track can reach truth, but it can reach it b'mikra. How exactly that happens, I don't know. And what the deficiencies of that are, also have to explore. I want to suggest something which makes it sound a lot better than we're putting it till now. The Rambam says, take a look at Aleph Lamed Daled. If I could find this. He's talking about why it's necessary to go through. Yeah. Okay. Volume 1, chapter 34, paragraph number 6. Regarding the perplexed. Lafikach echrechi, the Misha writes as Shlemus Anushis. It's he who wants human perfection needs les amen tchila belogika v'achkach mathematica v'hadroga achem bekin v'ader teolachem metaphysical. Okay, you want Shlemus Anushis, what you have to do. What if I don't want Shlemus Anushis? I don't have to do it, right? Is there any way to get to the conclusions, which is that's Hashem and being in the presence of Hashem and Vados, without going through these things? Yes, maybe, but it's not going to be Shlemus Anushis. And this is, now I'm making it sound like it's a bad thing. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I'm not so sure. Shem Tov Falquera is medayik this in the Rambam, and he says the following, on this parak, in Aleph Lamed Daled. He quotes from, I think this is from Ibn Sina, or maybe Averroes. I'm a little bit confused. I don't know how to read this. Maybe it's Ariston. He says the following. If it's possible for a person to reach certainty about something, a muscle, without going through the deductive steps, if that's possible, it's only rare. If there's a person who could reach Chachmas Yunus below limud, if it exists, it's only a person, Hamanasli, B'shit of Hashem.
It's only what? I'm sorry?
It's only a person, B'shit of Hashem. If it exists a person who could reach Chachma without limud, intuitively, like you said, the gut, then I would call him I wouldn't call him a person. Only call him a person. B'shita Hashem. Really, you'd call him a malach. Shem Tov says this also. Shem Tov tells, so the Rambam says Nevi'im could know things that are not accessible to the mind. That's how he uses it.
He says that. He makes a
The
statement.
question how to read that statement, right? But he's reading it that the Nevi'im could actually know things that you cannot reach through deductive reasoning. And he says the following: Shem Tov says, the Chachmei HaMechker says that this that happens to the prophets can happen to some wise people too, but the prophets is even stronger. Nirali, that Mereinu Zal in Aleph Lamed Daled, who says you must go through the steps. Loi diber ella b'shleimus hamusig mitzad b'kares hanimtzoyim. He's talking about the shleimus that you achieve by science, by observation. Loi hamusig mitzad hashefa Elohi. If you have something from a shefa of God, fine. V'hu hamusugol b'yechidim ibni adam v'kein amal l'mishiyitza shleimus ha'anushi. Shleimus ha'anushi. Here's the way to do it. We know how to do it. We know how this is done. We know the path to perfection. Then there's something else. There's something where God-given perfection to people that are maybe not even really people. And it's certainly not shleimus ha'anushi because it's not the perfection of a human. It's just like a gift from heaven or something like that. So, and they can reach truth through intuition or something like that. Yehuda Levi says this also, by the way. Yehuda Levi says, or maybe it's Chavis Alvavas, now I don't remember. I don't remember which one. One of them makes this distinction very clear, that there are some people gifted with noble souls, holy hecher neshamas, and they just know things. Like about Hashem. They just know it. They just know it. They don't have any doubts. They taka know it. They have certainty. They have the same certainty that the philosopher reaches after.
And there's nothing to do with shleimus. It's just.
So it's not shleimus anushis. It's just, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's not shleimus anushis.
He implies that by seeing it. Implies that. He kind of
Well.
got dumped in. They didn't do the work.
Okay, no. He doesn't say that there was some sort of, he doesn't tell us how they reached it. He doesn't tell us.
There's no indication they put in work.
Pia Gvura, maybe that Meifis meaning demonstration. What? Huh? Ah, good. So right. So that's what mikra might be. Meaning the Rambam does not special cases, and it happens, and we don't know why it happens, and we don't know how it happens, because by definition it seems to be out of what we can explain. But we do observe it, and something like those people, those holy people, those lofty souls, actually have the same kind of certainty that people have from learning philosophy, etc.
But the letter to the Talmud that we just read seems to indicate that the Rambam was saying, like, you almost, I'm paraphrasing, like, you were pushing me for answers,
Right.
and I didn't want to give you the answers. I wanted you to approach it in a linear fashion.
Right.
So maybe the mikra is just, you sit down with somebody, and even though you're not holding, and you haven't done all the prereqs,
Right.
he sits down and he tells you topics.
Right. So then,
what the answer
right.
is.
But how do they get the vados though? How do they get
Well,
the
again,
vados?
what we said earlier, who says vados means you fully understand it.
Right. But how do you get? You mean Istam? You're sure because you
law.
trust him.
You know a rule of reality. I don't understand gravity, but I know if I push somebody off a cliff, they're going to fall and die. Do I understand it? Can I explain it? Can I do a chacha?
Okay, so the question is, can taklid equal vados? Taklid means tradition. Can something that you received as a tradition be called vados? Huh? Where? No, he doesn't say. No, but he doesn't say where they got their vados from. In other words, Yaakov is suggesting that maybe the vados comes from Pashut. He has a Rebbe like the Rambam, and the Rambam convinced him because he's like, my Rebbe doesn't make mistakes, and if my Rambam believes it, it's for sure true. You know, that kind of thing. And maybe that's what he calls vados. Okay, fine. So the question is, right? The question is over here: are we? Yeah, I guess there's two ways to look at the parallel tracks over here, right? Either the first one, the halakha path, is a lower path and doesn't really work, or it doesn't give you something that should be certainty, but just gives you the feeling of certainty. Or if we read it as being actually the more holy path, as it were, meaning the one that's more in touch with heaven, and heaven just reveals things to these people. And the mice, it happens, and maybe the Ram knows it does happen to people. In other words, what's the mikra, right? So basically, going back to the letter, what's the mikra? Is the mikra something like you were saying, or is the mikra, look, you'll probably, if you sit and learn for 20 years, and something's going to happen. The fact is, people who do this for 20 years, they turn into good people. I can't explain why, but they do. And that's called mikra.
He doesn't want
Right, he doesn't want that. Exactly. No, he doesn't want that, but it maybe is a phenomenon that people can purify the neshamas, and through learning Torah, and they never cracked a secular book, and the mice, all they do is learn Gemara and Agarata and Psukim, and forget that opens their minds to Hashem, and somehow they get the same madrega. But the Rambam does not want that. But I'm saying, is it like a kind of level of like a high level neshama, or is it a lower level? That's what I'm saying. There's two ways to read it. But not even if it's a high level, the Rambam definitely does not want it to be a mikra, and he seems to be saying that was Ben Zayma's flaw. That Ben Zayma, meaning, let's say I'll read this as a hecher and a shamas don't need the science. Okay, they don't need the science, but look what happens to them. Lamaisa, when they only have the emes b'mikra and not bedarka, they are liable to go crazy when they try to really ramp it up to level 7.
It's counterintuitive though, because he says it in the paragraph where the Bindi is busy with science.
Right.
And you were saying that Ben Zayma was stuck outside because he was not busy with science.
Yeah, interesting. So you were not busy with math, you mean? No.
Not busy, excuse me, math
Yeah.
and logic.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, good. Now, Agav ha'oreh from B'Shem Mikey Stone. The mashmos over here is that Ben Zayma did not know natural science, right? Okay, but didn't know math. Now, the Gemara says that Ben Zayma, when did Rabbi Yeshua say Abdaim Ben Zayma b'chutz? Because Rabbi Yeshua was Maisa Ben Zayma shel Yosef al gabi Ma'ila b'har Abayis, and Rabbi Yeshua passed, and Ben Zayma didn't stand up, didn't notice him. So, because he was spacing out, and Rabbi Yeshua said to him, "Me'ayin l'ayim Ben Zayma, where's your head?" And he told him, "Tzeifer hayisi ben mayim alyon and mayim tachtoim ve'im ben zelazeh elo shlosh etzbos," I think. And Rabbi Yeshua said, "Adayim ben zayim b'chutz," because he's confused. This is because Ben Zayim is learning out to day 2 from day 1 against a ma'isa. Because day 1 it says Yimar Chefes, and Yimar Chefes al boneha is 3 its fingers, and Rabbi Yeshua says it's a mistake because that's day 1 and it's day 2. So number 1. Of course, this relates to Mayim, Altimu Mayim, something about the Mayim and Mayim Tachtoidim. And the Rambam seems to be saying that Ben Zayma's error came from the fact that he didn't know natural science. So he's talking about Mayim Tachtoidim, and he doesn't know natural science. So he doesn't know what Mayim is, okay? And that's perhaps, and what Mikey said is that he was also measuring 3 etzbahis. So maybe he's Isaac in Mathematica and Logica. So here you are measuring that which you don't even know, right? It's like he's measuring the Mayim Alyonim, which is natural science, and Mayim Alyonim, which is divine science, and he doesn't even know what they are, but he's applying the tools that he has, which are mathematical and logic. Okay, so I don't know, maybe Ben Zayma was fine. Now, I want to suggest, going back to Beni, that the Rambam wants him to learn a Bedarka relates to Beni. Why? Because let's assume that the not darko way is a kind of divine inspiration. Okay? Gil Eliyahu Chveis. By the way, the Mekubalim said, where did they get Kabbalah from? Where does the Kabbalah say? Where did the Kabbalah come from? Eliyahu Navi. Shine, beautiful. Eliyahu Navi came and taught to Yitzchak Saginar and the Ravid and so on. Which means there's divine inspiration can implant in the mind true ideas. Okay. Very nice. That's not the emes bedarka. That's not shleimus anushis, according to the Rambam. And according to the Rambam, I don't think anyone would say shleimus anushis. They just don't care about being anushi. They think we shouldn't be anushi. That's a big machlekes. But the Rambam also knows that those things exist, but he thinks we have to do it. At least he wants to do it bedarka. He wants to do shleimus anushis, and that's what he wants the student to do. So that's da beni. Dahainu, you're my student. You're the one who I'm going to be moiled, as you look in the back in the pack of Yolad. I'm going to develop you. I'm not just going to prime you so that something falls into your mind from heaven because you fasted for 40 days. Again, it could be done. And I was moided to that. So Ayin Aleph Lamed Daled, Ayin Shem Tevot. It could be done. Heilige people who get Giluyim and they become certain. But that's not what he wants to do. He wants to impart his wisdom to the son. And there's a way to do that. And that's why he calls him Beni over here. Because in the context of you and me, and doing the Bedarka, you're outside the palace until you move on to natural sciences. And I think maybe there's also a wordplay over here of Ben Zayma. The reason why Ben Zayma is called Ben Zayma, okay, why is he called Ben Zayma Pshat? Because he wasn't Samuch. He was a Ben. He remained a Ben. The point is that, okay, he's supposed to be trained. Why are you calling him a ben? Because he's supposed to be in the Rambam's drash over here, because he's supposed to be trained by a Rebbe, and then we're not going to call him ben anymore, because I'm going to call him Rebbe. And so those who need training, like you, my son, or Ben Zayma, the training has to happen a certain way. Okay? Now, let's go back to the question. Okay, why are you outside if you're, right, back to the question I asked. How could you say you're outside if Lamaisi he was Isaac Be'iyun? So what's the answer now? Do we have an answer?
Because he's not doing it the way the Rambam wants.
Right, but does that make you outside? Okay, I don't know. In other words, is it certain people cannot do it the other way, or is it you shouldn't do it the other way?
This is where you're not going to
Right. Is it that like certain people cannot do it the other way, or is it just that I'm saying, here's how I want you to view it? I mean, or is it like once you start one? I think you can't. I think it's once you start one, and maybe that's misasik. You can't start studying logic and math and then also at the same time. Right? I'm saying a big word now. No, I'm saying a big word. I want to say a b'dech mashal. You can't go home and read Aristotle and then go to yeshiva and expect to have Gilum. No, I'm saying that's the emes over here. It could be there's one or the other. And that's why the Rambam says Kol Shom Mashat Misasik mathematical logic. You know what I'm saying?
But if we're
You can't dabble, you can't nash them both. Yeah.
And one track doesn't get you to the same place as the other.
Well, both of them could eventually move on to 7, it seems. Except that Ben Zayma, I don't know.
I don't know if one can get you to 7. Can halach get you to 7?
Well, so that's a very interesting question. Okay. I read that once we get past 6.
Halach gets you to 6.
No, but I always thought that 7 could come after either the halacha track or the science track.
Halacha track and then turn to Hashem?
Yeah.
What would you do in halacha for if you were to turn to Hashem?
No, what do you mean?
Not the tradition sense, right?
Wait, what?
In the science
No.
track, you've perfected your mind and
Yeah.
you're davet by Hashem all the time.
Okay, right.
In the halacha track, you've done mitzvahs the whole time. And also now you're
No, you already got to number 6, which means you got a vade from Yonim Malakim.
That means you've
Right.
gone past halacha though.
You've gone past halacha, and so the 7th, according to reading the 7th, is the same on both.
That's what I thought, but I'm not sure. You're right that it may not be true. Maybe the 7th is a continuation of.
Because
Science track, I don't know.
It's not the same. It's not
What?
7, science gets you to 7. 6 on the
Stops
halacha
there.
track stops you.
I don't know.
So if that's the case, then Rambam's like, look, I want you to get to where you need to get to.
Yeah,
You aren't getting it the other way.
right.
You
But
get mikra, or you get
right.
Barbarada or Vadai through
Right.
some sort of special thing. but
right,
It's not going to get you to the same place.
right. But here's the thing. The thing is that it's very interesting. Very interesting how you're saying. I don't see a remez to say that group number 7 has to continue 6 from the science track. I don't see that. But I have to look at that more closely. It's very good. Very good point. I know. That's I know that would be the deal, because Shlemos is something that we have in the science track 6, right? Science 6. Yes. That's where there may be a support for what you suspect. Okay. Moving on. I want to talk about the sultan over here, and I want to first notice something very interesting. Oh, Agav, you have to understand this mashal. It's a beautiful mashal because you notice something very interesting, that the king doesn't need anything. Servants don't do anything for the king. The whole question is whether the servants, where they are. Yeah, the yachas of them to the king. It's an amazing mashal. And similarly, with I'm going to talk about the avodah in our parak, it has nothing to do with doing anything. It has to do with achieving a kind of kesher with God. Okay. The Rambam gives the piston for the mashal, right? But he never tells us who's the sultan. He should have said, paragraph number 3, Hareini poisel chamashal asum tzeisi. What was the mashal? Hamelech ba'armoinai. So you should say like this: Hamelech is the Shem. The Armoin is I don't know what. He never tells us who the Melech is. The Sultan, he never tells us who the Sultan is, and he never tells us what the Armoin is. In contrast, in the next parak, which also is all about a mashal, and there the Ram uses the word Melech consistently, not Sultan. There the Ram makes very explicit what the meaning of the mashal melech, what it alludes to. Perkenun Beis, the Rambam says, Ein yeshivas shalom tumas v'stan gozu shlavadei bebeisai. Person sitting and motions and the behavior when he's alone at home are not the same as yeshivas tumas v'stan gozu shlavadei melech godoy. Again, the word melech. And in the Bura is going to you don't talk the same when you're in family with melech. Lochein al mishabecha b'shleimus anushis. Okay. Mishayeh ish elikim be'emes. Lasim leiv. If you want to be a shleimus anushis and be an ish elikim in truth. Lasim leiv. You should notice the king, the melech, the great melech that surrounds you and is connected to you constantly is greater than any flesh and blood. King afilu yadav shloimei. Okay. What's the melech? Seichel. Shehu hakesher beinenu lebein Yisrael. The seichel, that overflow of intellect on us, that is the melech, and that is which is the bond between us and him.
Do you read that as the seichel at all, or do you read that as our seichel?
I think it's a seichel apoel. But we unite with it. Yeah, I see. Seichel apoel, right. Okay, I have to look at the Mefarshim there. That is the king. Why is that the king? Because it is the bond between us and him, Yis'aleh. And just as we know him through that light, so too he sees us through that light, and by virtue of it, he's with us. Amazing. Amazing. And when the perfect people know this, they have Yerushalayim, and the Shechinah. He says that's why the Gdolei Chacham would cover their head, because the Shechinah hovers over the person. Shechinah. So I'm talks about the Seichel, which is a Melech, and that's the Shechinah. Presence of Hashem. How is it the presence of Hashem? Because that is how we know Hashem, and that is how Hashem knows us. So the fact that the next chapter, the Rambam talks about the Melech, a Melech, gives a mashal, and gives us a nimshal, that brings out sharper relief that in this chapter, the Rambam never told us what the nimshal is for the sultan. Okay? So let's say like this. Let's say the sultan, let's say the nimshal for the sultan in our chapter is Hashem. Sultan hu Hashem, and the melech is the seichel. Let's suggest that for a second. I want to go back to that funny passage where the Rambam combines the two words and see how to read that. If we assume that the sultan is God, the melech we know from back chapter 52 that the melech is the seichel. So let's read, we're talking about now group number 6 in the mashal. V'yesh shenichnas l'b'soif alachatza pnimis shel habayis. It's in paragraph number 2 in chapter 51. V'yesh shenichnas l'b'soif alachatza pnimis shel habayis. Some people are entered the inner chamber. Kach shu nimtza im hamelech b'mokom echad v'hu beis hasultan. Him and the melech are in one place, and that is the house of the sultan. But he doesn't see the sultan. So now let's insert our nimshal. Him and the seichel are in one place, and that is the house of the sultan, of God. If we read it as an nimshal, he and the seichel are in the same place, and that is the house of God. Okay? One place means one rank. You have to look at the parak of mokim. We know, of course, it doesn't mean place, not spatial. It means rank, madrega. So him and the king, which is the seichel, are on the same rank, which means he's perfected his seichel. Perfect. Since group number 6 is the person who knows everything there is to know, we'll go with the science track for now, just to keep it simple. So him and seichel are in the same rank because he has perfected his seichel. And that rank, which is seichel, is the house of God, which means that's where God dwells. That's what we see in chapter 52. And the Shechinah is identified with the seichel. So it's the dwelling, it's the indwelling of Hashem is the seichel. When we say Hashem dwells in this world, It means Hashem is revealed, manifest through reason. And so it fits in very nicely to the mashal. Nonetheless, the Rambam doesn't say that the Sultan is Hashem. Okay? Now we have a question. In Gimel Zayin, the climactic statement the Rambam makes about Ma'aseh Merkava, Chilek Gimel Perek Zayin, paragraph number 7. We have a vision of something on a throne. As we know from the parak about thrones, kings sit on thrones. That's why Hashem has a throne. Yechezkel saw a Dmus Adam on the Kisei, and says the Rambam, in paragraph number 7, it's not a mashal for Hashem. Because Yechezkel said it's the Mara Dmus Kvoid Hashem. Kvoid Hashem is not Hashem. Nimtza. Shekom Hashem Shir Basagas Elu Kulon in Elu Kvoid Hashem. Dainu HaMarkovo. V'lo HaRoichiv. Remarkable statement. Remarkable statement, we're not going to go into this, but the Rambam says that the Kavod Hashem is part of the Merkava, not the Reichiv, which is a remarkable statement, because of course, the Merkava is there to bear aloft the thing that's on the Kisei. And how could the Rambam say that that's part of the Merkava, not the Reichiv? Okay, we're not going to go into that. The main thing is the next point. Kihu Yisala Inatim Hamshala. Havin Zayis. Bottom line, climax of Ma'aseh Merkava is, it's impossible to give a mashal for Hashem. And Yechezkel, who saw an Adam, makes it very clear that it's not the most, it's not in Ma'ar the most Hashem, it's the most Kvoid Hashem. Kvoid Hashem is not Hashem. So you can't give a mashal for Hashem. Why can't you give a mashal for Hashem? Because a mashal means A is like B. Hashem is not like anything else. Look in the program of the Ta'arim. There's no Yachas between Hashem or anything else. So it's not true. Hashem is not like anything else. There is no Yachas. Huh? So let's say we always talk about Hashem having a mashal for Hashem as a melech. Like Aleph Mem Vav, the Rambam says, because I'll always talk about Hashem as a melech. Well, look at Gimel Nun Beis, we see the melech is not Hashem, it's the Seichel. So whenever we talk about a mashal melech, I think we don't mean God Himself. Can't give a mashal for God Himself. We mean the Seichel, which, not going into this whole shmuz of Kvod Hashem, but the Rambam says in the Pishim Shais in Chagiga, on the Mishnah Kolam Stakal, but Kvod Komishalei Chos al Kvod Koinoi, Royal Shloi B'Loilam, the Rambam says, Mishalei Chos al Kvod Koinoi is someone who's not careful to preserve his Seichel. Ki ha-Seichel Kvod Hashem. Seichel is Kvod Hashem. The Seichel is Kvod Hashem because reason is Hashem's revelation. That's what it is. His manifestation. Reason is simply the order of how Hashem reveals Himself. It's revelation. In other words, let's say it this way: things weren't reasonable, it wouldn't be revelation. It would be unclarity. Reasonableness is Hashem's revelation. So therefore, a person's reason is the glory of Hashem. So where Hashem reveals. Okay. So going back to our parak, as Tevi was saying, I think the Rambam is saying like this. Here's a mashal. But he doesn't give a nimshal for the sultan. Because to give a nimshal for the sultan would be to give a mashal, say Hashem is like that, which you can't do. It's not true. But it still serves as a placeholder. The sultan serves as a placeholder, and even when we carry over to the nimshal, because the nimshal, of course, is all about how close people are to Hashem. But the Rambam only brings in God in the Nimshal when he talks about the perspective of the people, right? There's people who think about God and they turn away from everything else. So from the perspective of the people, of how the people approach God, there's a purpose in putting a sultan in the mashal. But the Rambam cannot say and will not say, Pirush mashal, the melech is, the sultan is God. It's not.
The sultan doesn't even appear in the mashal.
In the Nimshal, you mean?
Or the mashal. Read the mashal. Sultan does not show
he's just
up.
there.
It's his palace. And
No, but some people
the
speak to him.
mashal is about
In seventh group, though.
proximity
Right.
to the sultan.
But he does nothing, you're saying.
Yeah, but the people who Meaning,
Most of his people speak to him. Does he speak back?
Paragraph. He's saying the seventh group, he does.
Yishma divrei hamelech. So,
they interact.
but it's interesting. He doesn't say the sultan speaks to them. He says they hear. Even there, he doesn't say the sultan
It's all
speaks
about
to them.
That's what I was trying to say. It's all about the people in relation to this
Yeah,
absent.
very good. And by Moshe, now I realize also by Moshe, the way he describes it, some people reach a level that they're shoyel v'ne'ene. They ask and they're responded. They get responded. Again, it's all from the perspective of Moshe. He doesn't say there are people that Hashem speaks
So
to.
then you mean paragraph 10.
Yeah, midaber umudubar elov. Midaber, we have to look at the Arabic, but I imagine this is probably being faithful. Midaber umudubar elov. Yeah, in paragraph number 10, fall into that. It's spoken to him. So the sultan is always passive. In the nimshal, right? Very good. Okay. By the way, okay, so just this as an aside, because it's just important. Chilik Pagnum Beis, right? The Rambam says, Eini Shivas Shalom, obviously everyone knows it's the inspiration source for the Ramah, right? And what does Ramah say? Ramah does not say that you're in the presence of a melech. Seichel, right? Says the Ramah, Koshking Shiyasam Adam Libash, HaMelech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shmalech Alatz Gevoideh. He quotes, the Pesukim that the Rambam quotes, yeah, and he says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How does Ramah do that? So Makbili says something like, whatever, the Ramah was, I don't know what, they don't want people to think something like that, sanitizing it. The Maisa, the emphasis like this. The Ramah Torah Israel talks about a Gemara in Sanhedrin that says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came and shaved Sancheir's beard. It's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Vayomahu yigalach Hashem b'sa'ar ha'sechiro. Amar vavo molim b'kokosav yav shel Amr. Asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'idmilei kigavra sabo. And he told them, you're going to go to these kings, when you kill them, and you're going to go down to Gehenna, and it's not going to look good for you, so you have to shave your beard, something like that. So he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to us, bring me a scissor against a mice. And the Ramah says, it's Rachik min ha'emes v'pshutai. What's going on over here? V'pshutai yesh harbe kfiris b'lakosis baruch shemen because it. What's going on? Making fun. He said making fun. So he has 5 pshatim, and his 5th pshat is HaKadosh Baruch Hu ha'amur ba'agad hazois nemer ala seichel hanikne. Seichel hanikne. Person seichel that he's kind of. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu means. Hanikra HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'fiyah chachamim. The chachamim have a kinoi or mashal. It's a mashal for the seichel hanikne, or a word that they use for seichel hanikne is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He sees it in Beis Lamed. You have to look into that. Okay, interesting. So he's not sure if it's the Seichel HaPayil, or the Seichel HaNikneh. And when the Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu came to Sancheiriv and appeared to him like an old man, it means that Sancheiriv thought he's going to become wise like old people are. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to him like an old man means his Seichel had the wisdom of an old man, and it got him to do X, Y, Z. That's what he sees in Beis Lamed, which is what this, I think, for the Nachash. You have to look. I think you have to look at the Mefarshim over there, where I think it's talking about where the Nachash was on a Gomel, a large Gomel, and the Mefarshim say the Gomel is this and the Nachash is that, and the Rambam quotes the Medrash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makt. I think that's what it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makt the camel and its rider, and Ayin Mefarshim over there means the Seichel HaNikneh. Okay, fine. Good. So I want to just read a little bit from the Maimar HaNevreches to round out what I think the Rambam is saying over here. It brings out also this idea that there are really 2 kings. There's the Melech and the Sultan, and that there's a close connection between them two. Like Rambam says, both in our parak and the next parak. The next parak he says that the seichel is the kesher b'neinu, and in our parak he has that long ha'or where he says the seichel is the kesher and you can mechazik it, etc. And this, Why is it the Melech HaGadol? Huh? Right. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to say much about the Sultan because it's only there as a placeholder.
What's the part
Yeah.
on the chat today where he also says Sultan and then he says
Yeah. So I was just searching through the Mardavukim Sultan and Melech, and that was in Aleph Mem Vav. Yeah, Aleph Mem Vav, where the Rambam says Chazal can do give Mashalom. That Hashem is a Melech. There he talks about he switches back and forth there as well. You have to be. I should have asked Zeval this. I didn't have time. I'll ask him. You have with him? You want to ask him? Oh, okay. I want to just read a little bit from the Maimon of Rechus. The Maimon of Rechus is Vadia, the grandson of the Rambam, and it's clearly you could say a pirush, as it were, on these 4 prakim. Really on the all 4 prakim. If you read through it, you'll see almost all of the ideas that are dealt with in the Meirah are dealt with here, and the same psukim recur, and it's very beautiful. And one thing I see in the Maimon of Rechus is that this business of reason being the king is made very explicit and unabashedly. The reason's providence is what watches over you. Reason's will, even, he talks about reason having a will. He has a beautiful mashal over here, just like this is a mashal for what the Rambam says, that once a person thinks about Hashem in truth, he always has hashgacha, even when he's not actually thinking about it. He's always changed forever. Consider how milk floweth from the breast of the nursing mother whenever she thinketh of her suckling, even though the latter be not with her. Her compassion is moved. In a similar manner, upon encountering a mutual affinity with a certain individual, reason will abide with the latter and never forsake him. So reason is like the mother, that as long as you establish a connection, then reason seeks out her baby. Okay. Take heed of reason and set his throne above the throne of the kings that are with you. That's in the pasuk. Reason should be the highest king. Listen to this. Okay. It is common knowledge that before you express your thought, they're already known to Hashem. All one's movements and stations, whether good or evil, are known and recorded by him. For this reason, the God-fearing are reluctant to uncover their heads out of respect for reason. So he switched from God to reason. And we cover our heads out of respect for reason. Reason, the seichel, that's the king, and it puts us in the presence of God, and we respect it. We cover our heads for it. Thus, in moments of anger or lust of any kind, they show restraint, firstly, out of deference for the soul. So he's going to say there are 3 reasons why a person should show restraint. Firstly, out of deference for the soul, with which man alone has been endowed, and in virtue of which it says that in the likeness of God he made him. Secondly, they do so out of deference for reason, which continually cleaves and communes with man, and upon whose account it is said that in the image of God made he man. And thirdly, they do so out of deference for the Creator, before whom man is ever present, while standing or sitting. How then should a person demean himself and go about his business in the presence of the 3 above mentioned onlookers? If you can take a look. So you're in the presence of 3 things: your soul, reason, and the Creator. And you should have respect for those things. Whenever a person has lust or anger, he has to exercise restraint to have respect for those 3 things, which I take to mean that when you realize how amazing those things are, you don't want to get in the way of their activity with your bad midas. So that's why you restrain your midas.
Separating 1 and 2 isn't seichel the nefesh adam according to the Rambam.
Okay, so it seems like this. Now, here's where I just noticed right before the shir that Zeval's new translation parts from that one. Because the way it has it over there, the soul is b'demusai, is what makes you b'demus God, and the reason is what makes you b'tzalmoi, which that matches Aleph Aleph, because remember when Aleph Aleph says the ability to be masculine is what makes a person b'demus. Right. So the soul is the potential to be masculine, which is such a powerful thing. And you have to have respect for that. You have to have respect for the fact that you have something which has the potential to be masculine. And then the actual reason itself, which makes you b'tzalmoi, that's another thing that you should respect, that's actualized, and that also you should respect for. And then there's the Creator. And then the parak ends, fine, I'm done with that. The parak ends, make reason the king. So he seems to, just like the Rambam, he seems to be, in a way, noticing that there's different things, but also merging them. Because you have the potential to have reason. You have the reason. The reason itself is the conduit to the creator. So therefore, it's by virtue of reason that you're in the presence not only of the reason, but also of the creator. Like the Rambam says, that the reason is a conduit towards. So that's why I'm saying my point is that this just made me understand better that the Rambam in Nun Aleph and Nun Beis is taka doing something complex. Nun Beis tells you that the king is the seichel, but of course, Nun Aleph doesn't tell you the sultan is the seichel. On the contrary, it seemed the sultan, you wouldn't think the sultan is the seichel in Nun Aleph, you think it's God. And I think it is supposed to be God because in Nun Beis, even though the reason is the king, it puts us in the presence of the creator. But the creator has no mashal. The creator has nothing to say about the creator, just that we're in his presence. The only thing we could talk about is the reason. So when we talk about him as a king and use that as a mashal, a melech, then we talk about the seichel. But the purpose of that is to be in the presence of the creator. Okay, hope that was clear. The difference, Zevald's new translation has the same pasuk for 1 and 2. It's so that's why I probably have to look in the original. He doesn't even have a comment on the bottom. I don't know if it's a mistake somewhere in him, or we got to look at the original if we have it. Okay, we'll leave it at that. So hopefully we'll do one more if we can, and I'll be in touch with you about the timing.
Something I started